How's it going, everybody? This is Alex Caceres, and you're listening to Story of the Fight.
What up, everyone? As you can see, Ramiro's not here today. As of yesterday, he texted me. He's like, "Oh, I got family stuff," as if that's more important than this. And he's like, "Do you think Toasty can fill in?" So
I can't hear
Toasty.
anything. Yeah, I have not been unmuted yet. I don't think because I can't hear anybody.
No, you're clear. But as Toasty works on this, so Ramiro texts me. He's like, "Hey, do you think Toasty can fill in?" Toasty jumps in. Doesn't have audio. I don't know if he can hear me now. Can you hear me now, Toasty? No. Rich, you might have to fill in for a bit while Toasty figures out the audio.
Everything's regular for Toasty on my side. He's unmuted.
Yeah, looks good. But while we figure this out,
I'm gonna jump out, jump back in.
Sounds good.
But
where can people find the show, Will?
Yeah, we're everywhere. If you go to storyofthefight.com, it's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, it's on, I think we live stream on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Then you can find our other episodes a little bit later on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere. Basically, just go to storyofthefight.com. It'll show all the links. And then you can click on them, subscribe on them. Toasty's back. And can you hear us?
Good. Yes. I destroyed my setup, but I did it.
Oh, man. Well, we appreciate you all the same, man. I heard there were UFC fights yesterday, right?
Yeah. So also, we're on a new platform. The platform we used merged with another platform. This is the first episode with that platform. So if there's kinks, we'll just blame it on
just realized that.
Yeah, it's like slightly different. It's the same. I don't know. I don't know why they
same but different.
Same but different. But yeah, we had UFC Vegas 73. Thank you, Toasty, for joining us in lieu of Ramiro. I remember you had texted me before the fights. I think before you knew that you were. It might have been after you knew you were covering, but you were like, "Man, I am so excited for a main event of Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill."
Little did I know I actually was.
Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while, you'll have like a fight or a card on paper that looks amazing and it's super stacked, and then it ends up not delivering whatsoever. And then there's the flip side where there's a card that on paper it looks terrible and there's no big name value and there's this and that, and then it delivers completely. And that's kind of what happened last night.
Top to bottom.
Yeah, top to bottom was great. We'll skip some fights just for the sake of time. There was 12 of them. But we'll start with Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill in the main event. Mackenzie Dern, I believe, was ranked 8 coming into this fight, and I believe Angela Hill she was 14, I think.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, top 15.
Just in the top 15.
Yeah, and Angela Hill's been kind of that's the description of her whole career, right? It's like she's been there for so long. And she hasn't ever really gotten past that hump. She's almost like, people say it like a bad thing, but I don't think it really is. But she's kind of like a gatekeeper for the rankings in that division.
Mm-hmm. She's very much like the Donald Cerrone of that division, which is hard for me to say because that breaks my heart, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and Angela, I mean, she's grown so much. Like in the cage, she got cut from the UFC, went to Invicta, became the champ there, came back, and she's just like, every once in a while, you can see like the steps of progression in her game, especially her striking, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still never been enough to like cross that hump. Meanwhile, Mackenzie Dern says, "I don't care about your striking technique growing. I'm just gonna fucking wing punches at you, and it won't matter." And that's
I think this was definitely one of those situations where I think Angela maybe it's not even like she bit off more than she could chew. I think she could have beaten Mackenzie Dern if this wasn't after such an emotional moment for her. I think Mackenzie Dern was beating anybody in the world last night. I think that's sort of what this was. Like, I think Angela just kind of like maybe
wrong place,
just
wrong
didn't.
time.
Yeah. This was not the one to take this time.
Yeah, and what you're alluding to, Mackenzie Dern was talking about, I think she just went through divorce. There's been a bunch of things that have happened in her life that she feels like she was talking about, normally you say like, oh yeah, you don't want to fight angry, right? Because then you'll open up holes, all that stuff. And there was plenty of holes here, but she fought angry, and she was saying like, I'm going to use this fight to like take out all my aggression for all that's going on in my life. And you could see it, man, like right from the beginning. She said that her game plan going in was to kind of just like slowly pace her down and cut off the cage, grab her, take her down, try to submit her. Obviously, because Mackenzie Dern's like a prodigy on the ground. But then she was like, they asked her in the post-fight interview, and it's like, hey, I thought you were going to come in measured. And she was like, well, I thought she was going to try to like circle the cage and like do all this stuff on the back foot. But instead she met me in the middle, and I was like, okay, let's throw down.
There definitely were moments where she was like doing the whole measured thing and plotting and sort of like, I call it quicksand, when like she grabs onto you and is like a wet blanket and just slowly gets to a position. She like gave up her back a couple of times, but it was like in a way where she was like, I know eventually I'm going to sink my way over and get your hips down. And that was sort of like the methodical points. But then, like she was saying, like every time they stood up, that woman was going 100 miles an hour, foot to the floor on the pedal.
Yeah, I mean, she hurts her in the first round. I think it was a right hand that hurt her, and she's like stumbling, right? Knocks her down against the fence, and then just absolutely smothers her on the ground. She's hitting her with ground and pound. She tries to get this armbar with like 10 seconds left. And it's like, everyone knows if there's 45 seconds, that's all she needs to, when she is in this position, she's going to get the armbar. The only reason she didn't win this fight by an armbar was 2 times the bell saved Angela Hill.
I was going to say multiple times.
Yeah, there was 2 rounds where she had the armbar, and Angela was doing a fantastic job defending, like with her life, basically, just holding on for the bell, and it came both times. But you could see even in the ground and pound, which normally we don't see from Mackenzie Dern. Normally it's much more, like you said, like methodical on the ground, is more position based. She's trying to sweep you because she'll pull guard. She'll try to sweep you off her back. She's trying to get to a position where she can get a submission. In this fight, it was like, no, I'm just here to beat the crap out of you, basically. And she's like yelling with every punch, like definitely taking some anger out.
It was almost like it was, which were you hearing more? Was it the thud of these punches, or was it her just doing I'm gonna smash you every single time?
Normally I hate that in fights when there's like the kia every time they throw a punch, like Holly Holm style, you know. But it's different when the punches are landing.
Fighter.
Caitlin Chikagian, is a notorious one.
Notorious.
But it's just pitter-patter shots that they're like screaming with, and you're like, these don't match the aggression sounds. But then Mackenzie Dern last night, the shots she was landing from the top, the elbows, the hammer fist when she's in the armbar position, and she's screaming with each one, it like matched I think there's a picture in here, Rich, of her landing ground and pound while she's like screaming. I mean, look at her face.
Jeez.
It was gnarly. And you know what was interesting about this fight? Let me see if I can pull up the scorecards, but I believe the first round was a 10-8 round. Yeah.
I gave her a 10-8 in the third, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she got the 10-8 in the first round. And normally it's like, okay, you get the 10-8 in the first round, and only one judge gave her the 10-8 in the first. Interesting scorecards. But yeah, 10-8 in the first. And then Angela Hill comes back in the second and wins the round.
Yeah, it was a very good round for her.
We might have a fight, and it was more like control based more than damage, right? And it was almost like, did Mackenzie Dern gas out in that first round? And then the third round started, and it was like, oh no, she's fine. She just got out positioned that round.
I think round 2 is like a glowing example of why Angela Hill probably would have won this fight if it was on any other fight camp. Like if this was not the time of her life that she fought Mackenzie Dern, that probably is the example I would point to like, yeah, Angela had the fight IQ, the skills to put Mackenzie where she needed to win this fight. She was listening to her coaches, but like I think it was like by the fourth, going into the fifth, she was like, I can't put pressure on her. Like I just can't do it. What do you want from me?
Because every once in a while, you get away with just like I don't want to disrespect Mackenzie Dern, right? But the striking technique is not the best, right? Like her chin's wide up, her hands are down, she's swinging from the hips, but they're so powerful that you almost have to just respect what's coming your way. And Angela was trying to be the technical striker and stand there and like slightly slip these shots and land her straight punches, but Mackenzie Dern just like wouldn't allow it. It's one of those weird examples where you just don't need the technique.
Yeah. And there were a couple points where Angela, like, she was getting overwhelmed and she was kind of doing the same thing. Like she was doing this dip over to the same side every time. And normally she's really good at like changing over and like double or like back to back forth. But like, bro, your brain can only work so hard for so long. And that was a grueling 25 minutes for her.
Yeah. And Mackenzie caught that tendency that Angela Hill was doing, right, where she's ducking to that side, and then Richard can go back a couple pictures where she lands that knee. I mean,
and that was a brutal. How she stood up from that knee and just
she barely did. She was out on her feet a little bit. But shout out Blunderbub saying good morning. Still reeling from the fact that I watched UFC last night. Shout out Blunderbub's a big ONE FC fan. It was a good card though. The UFC delivered. But yeah, I mean, and she lands that knee, and Mackenzie's like, cool, she's hurt now. Now's the chance for the takedown, and I'll submit her. And she throws the hip toss. I believe it was after the knee where she threw the hip toss, the head and arm throw, where she like overexerted and rolled over, or maybe it was earlier in the fight.
No, that was the first round. The second one where she caught her in the knee, she didn't get rolled through because that was the third round, and that was the one where it was definitely a 10-8. Yeah, that was the whole round.
If you look at the scorecards, it's crazy. So Mike Bell doesn't give a 10-8 round for the first round, which is insane to me. The third round and the fifth round, he gives 10-8s. And then that's the exact same scorecard from Sal D'Amato. And then Ron McCarthy gave her a 10-8 round in the first, a 10-8 round in the third, and a 10-8 round in the fifth. He gave it a 49-43, which honestly, like, yeah, that's how it kind of should have been scored, you know? Because how can you tell me that from Mike Bell and Sal D'Amato, who gave it a 10-9 in the first round for Dern, how does that round one, score the same as round two for Angela Hill? It should. Yeah,
true.
It should.
I was rereading the scoring over the weekend just for shits and gigs, and I almost was thinking like you could have justified giving the third round a 10-7.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, it was Angela had nothing
at all.
I think
she only had survival. It was that was the one strike round, and she only had survival. That was the only thing she had that round, and good on her because wow, that was surviving.
I mean. Shout out Blunderbub also says I actually enjoy the prelims a lot despite myself. The prelims are great. But what's crazy about this fight is it got fight of the night. When's the last time a 49-43 fight got fight of the night? Yeah. Basically, Mackenzie Dern beat the crap out of Angela Hill so bad they gave her fight of the night.
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude. And you know what's insane to me? Go ahead.
It was impressive. Like, honestly, like as somebody who gets beat up at the gym a lot, like that was very impressive. That sit well in my heart.
Yeah. And she deserves the 50K extra for
that.
But you know what's crazy about Angela Hill? She's 37 years old. I did not realize she was that old now. When they showed the tape, I was
forever.
Like, what? I know. I mean, tough. What was it? Tough 18 or something like that. Now they're on like 30 something. She was it was the same season with Rose and Carla Esparza, right? Was she on that season?
I believe so, yeah. I believe so.
That was a fun season. But I think I was in high school when that season aired. So it's been a long time. I don't know what Angela Hill does from here. I don't think she gets dropped out of the top 15 because she was fighting ranked 8, and the loss here doesn't really, in my opinion, justify her losing a ranking spot. But I know she does a lot of analyst stuff for the UFC now. She's 37 years old. this is a pretty big sign. Like, hey, you're not gonna cross this hump. It's been a while where you couldn't. Maybe she retires. I don't know. She just fights so often. It's like, how is she still doing this at 37? That's not.
And that's why I don't think the UFC is going to want her to. I think these are one of the few fighters that that's been around for a long time, but the UFC is so willing to keep around. It's very rare. UFC usually is like, as soon as you get on a new contract, they're already trying to push you out the door. But like Angela Hill, Donald Cerrone, there's a few of these fighters out there that the UFC is always wanting to keep around because, like you said, they are fighting every other day.
Yeah. Yeah. And did she take this on short notice, Angela Hill?
I'm not too sure.
So, right?
I don't think so. Oh, they moved it. They moved it. It was supposed to be on the last card, and they moved it over and put it as the main.
That's what it was. Yeah, not a great move. If you got a main event, if you get a main event because they're pushing your fight back a week, not the best situation to be in. But
I mean, it was a good idea for her in schematics wise. I mean, it would game plan. She thought she could outgas Mackenzie Dern, who hasn't had the best gas tank in the world. But again, it's just not the fight camp for her.
She also Mackenzie looked in probably the best shape I've seen her in. She had when she had her kid, she had that layoff. She came back shredded, right? And it was like, whoa, Mackenzie Dern is taking this way more seriously. But even last night, she looked better than that, like physically, you know. Like you said, the circumstance were stacked up against Angela Hill in this one. Mackenzie Dern was gonna win that fight. Like she went so. I mean, yeah, it was such a great fight. And Mackenzie Dern, she called out Thug Rose, which I think is a great call out. I don't know what's happening with Rose.
Yeah,
I don't know where she's at.
It's a good fight if you can get it booked.
Yeah, and I think Rose is somebody that, like we talk about, Mackenzie Dern really just winging her punches in this fight. Rose is someone that isn't going to succumb to that pressure and still be able to have the wherewithal in that fire to stick and move, use her footwork, exploit those holes that Mackenzie Dern's opening. So Mackenzie's not going to be able to fight like this against someone like Rose. But that being said, Rose has been out so long. Maybe that is the move. You just try to overwhelm her because she's rusty, you know?
Or she's just not like, her mind's not into fight mode in the moment your mind is. And that could definitely win you a fight easy. Yeah,
those are the little things that I think people don't take into consideration, because people will say like, oh yeah, on any given night, like so-and-so can beat so-and-so. It's like, yeah, because on any given night, you might be thinking about,
your mom, or fucking some bills or anything, some guy you drove with.
Yeah, exactly. And you just, for whatever reason, that switch doesn't flip. And meanwhile, the other person is going through a divorce and is actively trying to take out the aggression on you. Like, and that's like from her mouth, I'm not.
Yeah. Her dad's been fixing to give her a third degree, but hasn't been giving it to her because he's been waiting for a moment.
Yeah,
like this.
Exactly. Yeah. That was cool to see. Michael Bisping's like, I think Bisping was like, wait, was she not a black belt already? When he's putting the belt on her, you could tell he was like, is she just now? I thought she was a black belt. And her dad's like, third degree. And he's like, oh, third degree. Okay.
He was sitting over there like, oh, Dominic's going to give me shit for not doing my notes.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was a great fight. It's the first, it breaks the streak. The UFC has had the last 3 fight nights have not had a fight of the night winner because the cards have been terrible. So we got one. We broke
and it was a short notice main event that they moved from a different card.
That was pretty much a one-sided beatdown.
Yeah.
But, take what you can get.
I mean, it's crazy that the rest of the card was this good too, though.
Yeah, it was a good card. And speaking of that, we'll move on. Anthony Hernandez versus Edmen Shahbazyan.
Local Fluffy, man. I fought on same promotions that Fluffy has fought on before. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really? Fluffy's sick, man. Yeah. And he's been out for a while. I wish he was more active, but, it's difficult. Easier said than done. Edmen, this might be – he's already had the wake-up call. This might be the hey, this might not be what you're cut out for call. Because the fight started and he looked great, as he always does. The fight starts. Hernandez is kind of just dancing around a little bit. And Edmen immediately finds his range, hits him with a jab, and it's like, oh, was Anthony like knocked out last week in training, because that jab almost like wobbled him, and then he puts it on him. He's landing the 1-2. Hernandez is eating shots and wearing them badly. Like every single time he gets touched, he's reacting in a bad way. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I can fight also," and just talk about flipping a switch. As soon as he got a hold of Edmen and he started working that chain wrestling, and I mean his top game is so good. He just completely drowned Edmen, and it was his fight for the rest of the fight. He looks so good. And like I said, Edmen, this is not the first time where he's had success, and as soon as people start grappling him, it's all out the window. Not a good look.
Yeah. I think Edmen is going to learn one of the bigger lessons I had to learn sort of outside of fighting is like, you're not a measure of where you are at 100. You're a measure of where you are like either the majority of whatever you're doing or like at the end of whatever you're doing, right? Like if you're putting in all this work and then the last 30 seconds you're, you know, goofing off, throwing your arm straight in while you're in someone's guard, that's how you get Chael Sonnen and you get choked out with like 30 seconds left. It doesn't matter how good you are when, you know, the beginning of the fight happens. You need to make sure that that's your pace the whole time. That's your cardio the whole time. He's probably like, there are fighters out there that just like, they train when they're good and then they hope that their cardio is going to be good around that. And like, you know, they'll do running and stuff like that. But then there are other fighters, like I'm sure Fluffy does, like it's obvious based off of like when he's fighting in there, he trains grueling. Like he probably breaks himself first and then goes in there and does his technique and whatever he needs to do, going in there a shark bait with a fresh guy every single round and then going in and doing his technique. Like that's the sort of stuff that's going to build your character when you're dying, not trying to build it and then going out there and doing some running.
Yeah. You think Anthony wasn't tired this whole fight? I'm sure he was exhausted, but
did you hear him in the interview? He can barely hold his breath. He was like,
Blunderbub says Hernandez used an actual cradle twice as a wrestler. I was so stoked. Yeah. His transitions are so fun to watch. Anytime Edmen would try to like base up, he's like, nope, let me grab your far side ankle with an underhook on the other arm and roll you back over. He got the crucifix at one point. Like his positions are so fun to watch. He has the modified guillotine here where he drops down without the legs to wrap. And he's just constantly either hunting a new position or a submission. He's never just like, and that's how you outwork somebody like Edmen. And I'm sure that was the game plan, right? Because you see, like when Edmen fought, was it Brunson? Where it was like,
it was Brunson.
This is a big test, and then Brunson just outworked him on the ground. That's the blueprint, you know. And
until he proves otherwise.
Exactly, yeah, and that's why I say it's like you would say this is a wake up call, but he's had it already. You know what I mean? And
some people need to be slapped in the face a couple times, not just once, I guess.
Blunderbo says the scrambles late in the match were really fun to watch. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, and that's exactly it. And that's the flip side. That's the downside of fighting like Hernandez does, where Hernandez, because he's constantly looking for a pass or a new position or a submission, that does the flip side of that. It does create opportunities for your opponent to either get up, try to hit a scramble, try to use that break or that gap, because you have to leave a gap if you're going to pass. And you can try to take advantage of it. But Edmen just didn't have, I doubt his legs were even functioning by the end of this fight. It looked like he couldn't even base up, you know, like it was exhausting.
I honestly think the worst part of the fight for him was after the fight ended and Fluffy like picked him up. He's probably sitting there like, bro, leave me the fuck alone. I'm trying to nap right now. I can't stand.
Dude, because anybody who's even just done any sort of grappling knows that feeling when you've been trying to get a guy off of you and at a certain point your legs absolutely stop working. And you're like, I can get to my knees, but how come I can't get up? Or like, I have my feet on the hips. Why can't I push them off of me? And and you want to just lay there and die for a little bit. and Fluffy just goes up and I saw that too. So funny. But
the one thing I'm thinking of is like, bro, I've had so many teammates like try to pick me up. I'm like, nah, you can just leave me here. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good for a minute.
Blunderbuff says it's true he lost as many subs as he started, and I hope that's something that the judges see. Is you never know, like, really, what are the judges counting as submission attempts? You know what I mean? Like, how far do you have to get into a submission for it to count as a submission attempt? And
Yeah.
there's no line that they draw where it's like, oh, once you get to this point, because how can you really? Submissions are all so different. But I don't know what they credited him for, but it didn't really matter because he switched from the submissions and then just beat the brakes off of him. And
there were a few in there where you could tell, like, oh, he's only throwing this up sort of like to change position, like that modified guillotine you were saying. There were a couple in there where he was throwing them, and then there were other ones where he was like, okay, this is where you're going to move. I'll throw it so you get to that position, and like sort of like where he took the back, he had that modified guillotine, and then Edmen would shift his hips out so they were pointed to the ceiling, and he's like, okay, that's what I wanted, and Fluffy just shot underneath, threw his hooks in, and took the back. He's like, it was sort of almost obvious when you're watching it back, like, oh, he wasn't really putting pressure there. But then the one where he transitioned into the, I think it was either the Darce or the Anaconda, whichever it was, that was like deep. He was trying. Edmen was grimacing hard on that one.
Yeah. They gave him 4 submission attempts. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good. And you could argue there was even more in there. But yeah, Hernandez continues to impress. I think what really put him on the map was when he subbed Rodolfo Vieira. But that's now 4 fights in a row that he's won. It sucks because before, in that 4-fight streak, there's also been 4 canceled fights. And that's always been the downfall, right? It's like, how can we get this guy to fight more often? But that's 4 in a row, I should say, without all those cancellations. I mean, this guy, he's so fun to watch. And he's in a division where there's not like a ton of grapplers. You know, like if you look at the top 15, you got Andre Muniz, who just lost a grappling match pretty much. Yeah. You got Hermanson, who's more of just like a catch wrestler. He's not really like he's not really that much of a threat as far as finishing on the ground.
And like faux intensity, like fake intensity almost. Yeah.
It's like intensity for the judges almost.
Yeah.
Brunson, who's pretty much retired, I think. I don't know. Is he still in the rankings?
He's already talked about retiring a couple times, right?
Yeah. But that's pretty much it as far as like top tier grapplers.
I mean, he's beat Vieira already.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he's not ranked. I would like to not have him go up against Andre Muniz. I'd like to not match him up with other grapplers in the division because it's like I'd like to see the grapplers fight other people than themselves and like eat themselves.
Also, Andre Muniz, I'm pretty high on him. I think him and Fluffy are probably going to end up meeting down the line eventually. I would not match them up right now for sure.
No, and Imavov is he's got a fight lined up. Maybe Dolidze's coming off a loss. I don't know if this warrants a top 10 fight for Fluffy, but I believe Chris Curtis is booked. Brandon Allen's coming off a win. Imavov's booked. Gaslam's coming off a win. Like, it's tough. I don't know what you do if you're Fluffy. Maybe you take another fight outside of the top 15 and make yourself undeniable. But he's must-watch TV at this point. People need to tune in whenever he fights.
He's super exciting.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on that fight?
I mean, he made a grappling match with Vieira like exciting to watch in terms of like punching. Like, it wasn't just the grappling. Like, he can make any fight exciting. On that fight, I don't really have much else.
Yeah, he's just so good at understanding what he can do in every single position, whether it's a submission attempt, a transition, or striking. He's one of those guys that's very exciting on the ground. But yeah, we'll move on. We're already 30 minutes in. We've talked about 2 fights. We can go Lupita Godinez versus Emily Ducote. Probably won't spend too much time on this fight. It was.
I called this the Rock'em Sock'em Robots fight.
Yeah, they basically the whole fight just kind of stood in front of each other. Not a lot of angles. Godinez
That
would
was
just
my
kind of
big take. Yeah, there was no
yeah,
angles at all. It was forwards, or it was backwards and forwards. That's it.
yeah. Godinez was man really made a bad habit of just putting her head straight down and throwing overhooks, and it really worked in the first round. And then Ducote was like, "Oh, I can throw uppercuts too. I don't have to just throw overhands." And the uppercut was there the entire fight because Godinez just would high guard, head down, start throwing like this. The uppercut was there the whole time. Um,
Yep.
and Ducote had a good second round, but then the third round, Godinez went right back to it, and it was basically them just standing in front of each other with zero head movement, hitting each other in the face the whole
And I
fight.
mean, there was like a takedown or a kick thrown here and there, and like
Yeah,
change it up a little bit. But yeah, it was mainly just whoever happened to catch the other person, a couple more times won that round. But it wasn't anything spectacular. If you threw this on, this would be like a casuals fight. Like this would be the fight that you could throw on for somebody who's just getting into it, where they don't know
yeah,
a lot about grappling and kicking and all that, and
yeah.
kind of gets their feet wet. This would be a good fight for like that.
And then right after this, they watched Hernandez versus Edmen, and they're like, "Oh, grappling is pretty sick."
Yeah. Oh,
You
this
know?
is crazy.
Honestly, that's kind of all I had for this fight, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. The only other takeaway I had for this fight, it was pretty cool. It was like a little visual. Their hair is almost exactly the same, but opposite. So when they were standing face to face, it was like a yin and yang. So like one had their ponytail upwards and one had their ponytail downwards. So it looked like almost like a perfect yin and yang. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
little
how you know the
artistic.
fight was really good when that's the takeaway.
Yeah, I'm looking at the hair.
Yeah. We can move on to another very exciting one. Joaquin Buckley versus Andre Fialho. I know you're pissed about this one because Andre's your
Yes,
boy.
I am.
It's a hard night for Killcliff last night. I think they
Yeah,
had
it
four
was.
guys. I think they had 4 guys on this card, and I think all of them lost.
Yeah.
And some of them in spectacular fashion, like this one.
Yeah.
Andre is 100% kill or be killed. And then on the flip side, so is Buckley. So this fight had the recipe for a banger. I thought going into this, Andre was going to be able, because he's so good at landing. I mean, his right hand is a piston. He throws the 1-2. It's so perfect. Some guys have a modified 1-2, like Nate Diaz, right, where he almost falls into it. Not Fialho. He just stands there and he's just bap, bap, like Jack 5 and Tekken. It's like a robot.
Yep.
And on the flip side, Buckley, he comes in lunging at you, throwing crazy hooks from behind his back. And I was like, this is a perfect recipe for Andre to just land that piston and just keep punishing him for throwing these big looping shots. But that being said, if he's ever in the wrong place at the wrong time, Buckley will put you out.
Yep.
And the first round went pretty much like that. Fialho waiting. Blunderbub says Fialho waiting for the counter, caught the boot instead. Yeah, and you could see he had so much success in that first round. I thought. I believe. I don't know what the judges gave. All 3 judges. No, 2 judges gave Fialho the first round. I don't know how you give Buckley the first round
At all.
I mean, the whole fight was him doing this basically, and Fialho, like Blunderbub saying, just throwing the pull counter over and over again and just blasting him with that right hand straight down the pipe, beating him to the punch. But then the second round, you could see Fialho was biting on the feints way more. I think because he had so much success with the counters, you could see, like, in this, he's trying to throw the check hook, right, the left hook. And you could see a couple times where Buckley would dip like he was going to explode in, and Fialho would legitimately throw it. And it was like, oh, man, that's not good. And then,
Yeah.
And then
He was
Buckley
winging a lot
came
of
in.
them.
Yeah. And then Buckley was like, you know what else is a good weapon when I'm lunging in like this? When I lead with my head.
Yeah.
And, like, oh my God. He comes in, he ducks in, he explodes up, hits him with the top of his head, pushes off his head with his hands, and Fialho's
Definitely
like,
hits him in the
what
eye.
was that? Yeah, he was like, whoa, what was that? And then the ref comes in to stop it, and Fialho's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. And then eats a high kick immediately after.
Also, like, I think should be said, I think it was like maybe 5-10 seconds before that, he eats a nut shot too. The commentary even says it. He eats a nut shot, and I think Fialho was thinking Buckley was tired or something. Like he was putting pressure on him. I think that's sort of the same reason. Yeah, exactly. That's the same sort of reason he didn't stop for the headbutt, I think. And like, man, just take your break. Like, fuck, take your break.
Well,
take a break.
Fighters will talk about, Derek Lewis will talk about how when he's tired, he'll just kick somebody in the nuts. He's like, because they're not going to take a point off the first one. That guy's going to take his few minutes of a break. That means I get to also. And yeah, I mean, so on the flip side, sometimes you don't want to take that break because they also get a break. But yeah, then, and you can see here, Fialho's trying to, he's got the hand raised, his right hand, you can kind of see it's raised. I'd have to watch it again, but I think he was trying to, with the left hand, parry the kick like it was going to the body. And just wasn't, it wasn't. It went up high. It dropped him. He was flat on his back, head up against the cage, kind of like propped up. Was trying to watch TV while going to bed. And Buckley just walks over him like he's not even in a fight, like he's fucking the Crow or something. Walks over him. The ref is running from a mile away, as you can see where he is.
Hella far across the cage.
Softly puts his hand on Buckley's chest, like that's enough to stop the fight.
Yeah, and as he's screaming, "Stop!"
Yeah, and Buckley just drops one massive hammer fist on Fialho, and then he jumps in. He's like, "Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa!" And it's like a little dirty, right? The follow-up shot's a little dirty, but man, as the ref, you got to jump in between.
Oh yeah,
you can't just put your hand on a guy's chest and expect him to, after just dropping a guy. Yeah, there's the big hammer fist.
Two things can be true at the same time. Exactly. Like completely unnecessary. Like Joaquin is like, he's not a dirty fighter. It's not like he's, like you were saying, kicking in the nuts on purpose or scratching people's eyes. He's not doing John Jones type shit. But like, bro, just because it looks cool, bro, like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
that extra shot was not needed.
That's super fucked. He wasn't saying anything about your family. He wasn't saying anything about your religion. You couldn't even understand a fucking word he was saying. And you're fucking dropping bombs on him like you want to end his fucking livelihood. But then also, that ref, what are you doing with the L, bro? Is that the loser shit? Because that is not how you ref, my man. I've seen Muay Thai refs jump in and take shots because they don't want fighters. Yeah, like, bro, oh my God, what are you doing? Get in there. Do your job.
Yeah, that extra shot, some like that type of an extra shot is not okay. When it's someone who's shelled up and you're landing some shots on the arms, a couple extra get through, not that big of a deal. But when a guy's pretty much unconscious and he's like trying to get up, like I don't even know what's happening, and then you drop that giant hammer fist on him, and the ref is just standing there like, "Hey, the fight's over." Like, no, dude. There was 2 follow-up shots this card that I was like, "What are we doing? This is not." But it is what it is. It's fighting. People get hurt.
Wasn't this at the Apex too?
Yeah.
Like, come on, Vegas.
So much gnarlier, dude. Yeah. Who was reffing this one? Was it Hatley?
It was Mr. fucking
Kerry Hatley.
Yeah.
I feel like he did a bunch of fights last night. Every fight I
Herb did a couple.
Blunderbub says Olivier Cosce would never. The boss. Olivier Cosce. Yeah, I mean, but that's the takeaway, right? Buckley, I mean, both of these guys are kill or be killed. There was no way this was going to go to decision. There was just absolutely.
Buckley definitely looks better at this weight than he did at the upper weights.
I mean, when you look at,
it's nice that he put his pride behind him and finally listened to what people are telling him.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big deal. And he even talked about
his attitude is really bad.
Yeah, and that's what James Krause was always alluding to. But then we all found out that James Krause was a degenerate, so it was like maybe he was just not the best opinion on the matter. But then 2 things can be true.
Exactly. A degenerate can also think another degenerate is just a degenerate.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't take a saint to know.
Yeah. So we'll move on to another massive unnecessary follow-up shot with Diego Ferreira versus my boy Michael Johnson.
But bro, he felt immediately bad afterwards. You see that picture?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Michael Johnson is one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Same.
Which means
I love Michael
I'm
Johnson.
A depressed man because he is so fun to watch, and he's so good at just being so dominant until he gets absolutely thrashed and loses. The amount of times he has completely, I don't want to say coasted, because he's not coasting, but he's in cruise control. He gets in that flow state where he's landing everything he's throwing, he's slipping everything you're throwing. He comes back with like a 6-punch combo, and you're like,
Yep.
God damn, Michael Johnson's a world beater with those hands. And then all of a sudden he gets knocked out or he gets taken down and subbed, and it's like, he's so close to getting the win so many times in such impressive fashion. And this was one of those fights.
I think Michael Johnson is like the proof that, like you said earlier, anything can happen. Like MMA is one of those things where it's not like the team with the most talent, or the person with the most talent is going to win the majority of the time. Like, Michael Johnson is a world beater. Like, if you put his talent up next, like if you just didn't put a name on it and you put his talent pool up against another person's talent pool, you would take his sheet of paper over the others like 90% of the time. He's so good. His hands are so fast.
Dude, it's great. When he lets them fly, it's like he'll do this thing where he is really good at sticking and moving. And he did it in the first round of this fight. Like, he finds his range so fast where Ferreira would throw this big shot like this, miss, and Michael Johnson just leans out of the way, and then he's leaning back in, and he's like, bop, 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 just clubbing you with like 4 punches. And
then you're almost like blinded. You're like, oh shit, I just got with a flashbang. What's going on?
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck? It's like Rush Hour. It's like, which one of you guys just hit me? It's like, it's just Michael Johnson in there. It's just, he's hitting you from all these different angles, and then he slips right out right after, and you're like, man, he is slick. And then for whatever reason, he just he'll get caught sometimes. And Ferreira, I rewatched it right before we went live, and he was throwing this shot a lot, and Michael Johnson was trying to slip out off an angle, and just, I don't know if he just got a little too comfortable. If in this picture you can see Ferreira's kind of reaching with the punch. It's a lot more arm than it is his footwork, right? In the one that he actually landed, the big shot, which was the same punch, he throws the rangefinder out to the left, and as he's throwing that, he's actually using his feet to get there. And I think Michael Johnson got used to the range that they were fighting at, and Ferreira was like, "No, I took an extra step this time," and that's all it takes. That's literally all it takes. And he connected with that right hand. And one of the it's scary. A knockout is scary when the guy is stiff completely, arms outstretched, feet crossed, stiff, toes curled before they even hit the ground. And that's what this was.
And then he got hit.
And then Ferreira ran over and hit him again. I mean, look at this picture.
A la Den Henderson.
That's exactly what I thought about. And Michael Bisping probably had flashbacks. They probably had to pull him out of the booth while he was commentating this fight.
I know they were talking about how they had to pull out Paul Felder. They probably had to pull out Michael Johnson or Michael Bisping right after that one.
Yeah.
And then, like you were saying, where's the ref in this picture?
Yeah, like, dude, you got to be in there. Who refed this one?
Like, he should have been at the ESPN logo.
Yeah.
And then be running over to stop this.
Damn, Herb Dean.
Well,
the best in the business. You know what's funny is when for the 1FC card in Denver that I went to, as soon as Herb Dean showed up, he walks down the walkway on the side, right? Fights are happening. Herb Dean's showing up, and the crowd goes crazy just as soon as he enters the building. So funny, dude. Blunderbubb says Petrosian pose. Yeah, Petrosian's so good. Everybody who I've seen fight with the last name Petrosian, so fun to watch. It's a good name for fighting. Blunderbubb also says Herb was all the way on the other side, and to be fair, he did book it. But man, you got to be closer.
Yeah, but also he's 6 foot something, 200 something pounds. He can only book it as fast as a 205er, not a 155er.
Yeah.
Like, this is a Jason Herzog moment.
My time to shine. I could have been there. But if you watch Herzog specifically, he is always
in the moment.
Yeah, he's always right there, hyper focused, ready to jump in, and that's your job.
Like if you go on the Camo website, the organization that organizes California's amateur mixed martial arts, Herzog is one of the head pictures in a fight, and he's literally like 5 feet away, the beginning of the fight, and he's literally like just watching their eyes like the second the fight starts.
He's so good. He's the best ref in mixed martial arts right now. He's so good. But yeah, that's kind of all I had in this fight. You know, Michael Johnson snatching defeat from the jaws of victory once again. We can move on. We'll move on
since we're all done being sad.
Yeah, exactly. So that was Andre Fialho from Killcliff got knocked out. Michael Johnson, also from Killcliff, got knocked out right before that. And we'll move on to Borshchev versus Maheshate, who Maheshate, believe it or not, spends some time at Killcliff. And if you look at the results of this fight, it was also a knockout. It was 3 knockouts in a row for Killcliff, and that's tough. Yeah. But that's what happens when you put a striker in front of Borshchev. The guy, I don't know why they booked him against 2 grapplers back to back. And then he's like, I'm an alpha male now. That's not going to be a problem. And then he immediately got taken down and couldn't get off his back. And I was like, damn, still a problem. And then they booked this fight, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a banger because Maheshate is so long for this division. And
that was my first thing I thought when I saw them line up. I was like, damn, bro, he is long.
Yeah, and he doesn't use the tall man defense. You know, there's a lot of fighters who will fall into that trap if they're taller, and they'll get into that tall man defense where it's almost like my hands are at your level, and I'm just going to try to like keep my head away. And then you end up getting knocked out like Stefan Struve versus Mark Hunt.
All the time.
Yeah, but Maheshate doesn't fight like that, and it's really nice to see. He uses his range pretty well. But Borshchev, if you're going to stand with him the entire time, if you're a tall fighter, or if you're fighting a tall fighter, you don't want to stand in kicking range. You don't want to be outside because normally when you're out of range, he can still hit you with the leg kicks, with the jab, that type of stuff. So you almost want to either be way far away or in their face, smothering them where they can't get their limbs into their strikes. I thought Maheshate would have done a lot better if he was throwing elbows more and knees because Borshchev stayed 10 inches away from him the entire fight. It was exhausting watching how close
right
he was.
In his face. And then the other big thing is like, bro, you can't be circling to his power the whole fight. Every single time he's circling to the left, circling to the left, circling to the left. Eventually you're going to eat an overhand or a hook, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And the first round, at the end of the first round, Borshchev, he caught him big, hurt him bad, and unloaded on him against the fence, and the bell saved him. Also, Borshchev fighting with one eye this whole fight because he got a nasty eye poke. That was bad.
That thing was red.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they show the close-up. And Herzog, once again, fantastic ref. He's in there talking to him and stuff, asking him, like, doing everything he needs to just make sure he's calm, has the time. He's wiping his eye. I don't know if you saw the napkin or whatever they were using, the white cloth that they were wiping his eye. Every time they pull it away, it's more red. And I was like, is his eyeball bleeding? What's going on? This is terrifying.
Yep. So scary.
And apparently it was just his eyelid, but
it looked worse than Angela Hill's eye from eating the meat. And Angela Hill's eye did not look good.
No, it was bad. But yeah, Borshchev just like didn't care, I guess, and he just he's like, you know what? I don't really need to find my range. I don't really need to see the shots coming if I'm 10 inches away from him because I know he's right in front of me. Blunderwub says, not surprised he got poked. Maheshate's fingers pointing right at his face every time he reached to parry. Yeah.
Yep.
Ultimately, it didn't matter. Borshchev gets the knockout in the second round.
Doing his little dance. Everyone loves it.
How can you not? It's so good. How do people do that? I don't get it. How do they not just fall on their ass?
I don't know.
He does the little march. He drops to this. Then he crosses his fingers, ends up on his back. He's kicking his legs up, and it's great. After he just murdered somebody.
We're all having a good time.
We're all having a good time, except for Maheshate.
We don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, but good to see Borshchev in the win column. I think he's a super fun fighter. Just like keep him away from grapplers, and we can have
cool to see how happy Uriah got in that corner. I was pretty stoked.
Uriah's been having a good time lately, dude. He was over.
Yeah.
Speaking of Denver, he was in Denver for the Sage Northcutt fight, and Sage came out and heel hooked a guy in like 10 seconds, and it was like, what is happening? Shout out Uriah Faber. That's all I had for this fight. How about you?
That was pretty much it. Circling over to the power is probably my big takeaway. Like, you can't be doing that. And then, like you said, if you're the longer fighter, a la Stefan Struve, bro, you gotta use it. Even like Volkov does it too. He's a bit better, but like tall guys, if you're tall for the division, you got to use it right, man. Don't fight down to your opponent. Don't be. You're still using the same technique, man. Like, just be farther.
Yeah. And people will say like sometimes a shorter guy will have the same reach as like a taller guy that he's fighting, and it's like, no, it doesn't matter, because if you stand there and you put your fist up against the wall, right? You outstretch your hand, fist is touching the wall. Move it up 4 inches. It's not touching the wall
at all.
And then the taller guy will, like you said, fight down, and they're crouching at the same height, and it's like, that's not the move either. You got to use your physical attributes, and some people can't. Stefan Struve is probably the best example. So we'll skip a fight here for the sake of time. We're at 50 minutes. We're gonna skip the Carolina fight, even though shout out Carolina, back in the win column. I was
very surprised by that one.
Streak. I think she's three fights in a row she's won, which is awesome. I'm a big.
It's because Joe Rogan wasn't there to catch the opponent.
Yeah, man, not a fan of Vanessa, but we'll move on. We'll skip that. We'll go to Gilbert Urbina versus Orion Cosce. Cosce comes in, I believe, missed weight.
I think 2.5 pounds, or a pound and a half, because it's not championship fight.
Yeah. It comes in for the handshake. Urbina says, "No chance, dog." It's a cool Shenron tattoo.
That was my big takeaway. That is a really cool tattoo.
When he's getting announced before the fight, hits it with the Kamehameha, and then the fight starts. Yeah. The fight starts, and Urbina is just swarming him. Orion landed a couple big left hands throughout the fight, but outside of that, Urbina just beat the brakes off of him in the first round. And you could see, look, if I'm fighting a guy, it's easier said than done. But if I'm fighting a guy and he missed weight, the game plan shifts to body shots immediately.
Body all the time.
You don't know why he missed weight. Maybe he had the flu, like a week of camp, and it threw him off. Whatever it might be, but you can almost guarantee he's probably not going to be in the best shape.
Body or legs, because like they're either doing one of two things. They're either not dieting right, and their like body is susceptible to receiving damage because their stomach is like breaking down shit it shouldn't be breaking down, and it's not forming shit it should be forming, or they're not doing like road work or bike work or cardio work, so their legs are not solid. They're not ready to go to keep the foundation underneath them.
Yeah, and in the grappling exchange, something happened with Orion's rib. I don't know if it was a tweak. I don't know if he was if it was maybe a pre-existing thing, but Urbina was also throwing gnarly elbows to his side on the ground. I don't think the broadcast gave him enough credit for that. They almost were just saying like, oh, he was twisting and turning, trying to get out of full mount. But I think there should be more credit to Urbina on that. And in between rounds, also shout out UFC for not showing replays because they want to show more ads instead. They don't show anything from the previous round anymore unless it's the main event or the co-main. And apparently Orion goes back to his corner and says he thinks he broke his rib. And then the second round starts, and Urbina is just throwing that front kick to the body. He knows. And he lands it one more time, and Orion just goes down.
Kick.
Yeah, nasty, man. But the replay, what pissed me off, I didn't mention it in the Borshchev fight, but Borshchev drops him at the end of the first round. He gets saved by the bell. We go to the next round, and it's commercials, and then it's immediately the second round, and they're fighting. And it's like, wait, I wanted to see what he dropped him with. Like, what are we doing? And they're like, we're going right to the action. It's like, no, you're like, come on.
And it's like you miss a second too, right? Like, what happens if we see like a Ben Askren type shit and he gets running across need and you just started the fight? You think everyone's gonna be happy about that?
Meanwhile, the ESPN's just pushing like psychotic drugs and like all this weird shit.
Burger King.
Burger King 20 times. Yeah. That's all I had for Urbina. It was a good performance.
My main takeaway would be like, this was also, we talked about it a little bit beforehand, but like in the Apex, you can hear almost everything. Those shots were thudding.
Yeah.
They sounded like you were smacking like a coconut or like you're like a cinder block or something like on like a hard piece of metal or something. That was so loud and like
it was nasty, man.
dense.
Yeah, and you already know he's compromised. Then you hear it and you're like, oh my God. If he wasn't compromised before, he would be now.
BK, have it your way.
So we'll move on. We're gonna skip the Ilir TV fight, and we'll go straight to.
I didn't watch that one myself.
I didn't watch it either, which is why we're skipping it. Maybe it was great. Maybe that should have been fight of the night.
Destiny.
But I have a hard time believing it. But we'll skip to Chase Hooper versus Nick Fiore. Chase Hooper, he goes up to lightweight. He fills out a little bit, right?
Doesn't look like a child anymore.
I mean, not the best.
He doesn't look like an infant anymore. Is a better way to say it. Yeah. He doesn't look like he needs a babysitter.
Yeah. He didn't have to have someone cover his chores when he came to Vegas for this fight. But yeah, he shows up. You expect a durable chin. You expect him to get hit a lot, and hopefully he manages to get it to the ground and he can submit somebody. And this fight, he was firing on all cylinders. Everything was working for him. The first round, he gets taken down. Fiore's on top, and he's active off his back, right? But we've seen him be active off his back, but not be able to land anything. And eventually he gasses out on the ground and his body stops working, like we talked about earlier. But in this fight, what an insane pace. And he's attacking submissions.
The whole fight.
He's attacking leg locks. It's the same thing with striking where there's some guys that will just shoulder feint, but they'll never actually punch. So the other guy's like, I'm not going to bite on this feint because it's never real. I don't need to worry about the feint. Chase Hooper, when he attacks your leg, you can't just disregard it. You have to treat it like it's a legitimate submission attempt. And when you do that, one or two things is going to happen from Chase, especially in this fight. He's either going to get the submission, or because you're reacting to defend it, he can use it to get up. And he did it like 3 or 4 times throughout this fight. And I love that move. Like attacking someone's leg just to get the sweep is so sick to me, or just to get the stand up. And that's what happens when you're a legitimate threat, because they have to react to it. They can't just be like, I'll just leave that in there. I'll crouch. I'll smother it. It's like, no, I need to roll because he might get this.
This was a great matched up fight. Whoever matched this up did a really good job. I would definitely take this win as with a grain of salt for Chase going into his next fights. Like if you're watching his next fight, I would expect more like progression. Like he's definitely in the right direction, but I wouldn't expect this exact same performance, because you always got to remember that he's also fighting a jiu-jitsu coach. Like this is somebody else's jiu-jitsu trainer. He is definitely an MMA fighter and he's high caliber. There's a reason he is where he is, but this was definitely a good matched up fight by the matchmakers. This is one of those Damian Maia versus Ben Askren fights where it's like, both grapplers are basically going to stand up the whole time. It just happened to be that these guys knew what the hell they were doing most of the time. And throwing good combos most of that fight.
Halfway through the second round, all I could think is, I hope Chase Hooper doesn't think he's Bangkok ready after this, because a lot of grapplers will have success with the feet, and all of a sudden they think they can go to Thailand and start blasting people, and it's not the case. Because there were still a ton of holes. But what he did do well, he used his offense as defense. You know what I mean? Like, how are you gonna throw anything back when I'm hitting you with the 4-punch combo? You have to pay attention to that. It's the same thing with the leg locks. You have to be defending, and now I'm not attacking.
A great example of that is when, I think it was in the second or third, he got mounted. Hooper got mounted, and immediately he does something that one of my training partners, Isaiah, does all the time. He throws his legs all the way over and hooks his body and sort of pulls his own body out from underneath, and immediately, like you're saying, goes for a leg lock, almost like knowing he's not going to get it, but creating that transition to get back up and get out of one of the worst positions he could have been in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And and that's another thing is maybe at lightweight he can have more success with stuff like that because we've seen him try to do that at featherweight and it just doesn't work. You would think that going up a weight class it would make it even harder, but maybe because he's filled out more, he's got a little bit more strength to go with his technique. Because he did look filled out, he looked bigger.
He's also young. He's like
young,
still getting through puberty, basically. Like his body's going to change a lot. Yeah, he's not even 25.
I think he's 23. Yeah, Blunderbones says end of the third round, and he's still firing off even though he's exhausted. Yeah, he would throw this combo where he would either throw the 1-2 where he's shooting across the outside angle, the exit angle, or he's throwing like 2 hooks. He'll throw like the lead hook. He'll throw. I think it was a straight, right? Like a 2-3, right? He'll throw the straight punch, hook, and then the uppercut right under, and that worked over and over and over again. It was such a good combo, and Fiore was just in pure defense mode, like the majority of this fight. But like you said, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You got to take it. You're not Bangkok ready. Don't go out there thinking you're about to outstrike everybody.
Now, I do think what would be a good matchup for him is one of my teammates thought it would be a good idea to post about. I think the fight to make coming up soon, definitely not now, but you could definitely throw Anthony Figueroa Jr. in there, and I think that would be a cracker of a fight. Bro, he posted about it on his Instagram. I was like, I'll pay for that right now. I'll pay pay-per-view prices.
That'd be sick. Where's he? He just had a fight, didn't he?
Anthony, he just fought at Uriah Faber's card. I think Combat, they are, A1 Combat. They're either going to probably book him against one more fight and then give him a title fight, or they'll, depending on where the title, the champion is, they may have him booked to fight the title soon.
Hell yeah, bro. That's sick.
Same weight class.
That's another organization, kind of like the LFA or like Cage Warriors, that the UFC like clearly pays attention to. You know, you get a couple fights in there and you win them. The UFC's probably you're on their radar.
Yeah, you're on Fight Pass.
You're on Fight Pass. We will move on to the next one. The last fight we're going to cover: Natália Silva versus Victoria Leonardo. It's a quick one. We're already an hour in, but Natália Silva is another person who should be on everybody's radars. She has not lost since 2017, and it was against Marina Rodriguez. Since then, she's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fights in a row that she's won. Most of them finishes. I think only 3 of them were decisions. She's armbarring people. I think she has 4 armbars in that list. This is her second TKO in a row in the UFC. Look, Victoria Leonardo, you got the respect, you got the props, you get in there, you're fighting in the UFC, fantastic. But this was as evident as ever there's levels to this type of fight, because they go out there and Leonardo's throwing her shots, and you can see just the way she's moving. She's moving like me. You know what I mean? Whereas Natália Silva is darting in and out. She's light on her feet. She has that fast twitch muscle. She's not sluggish on anything. And when she unloads, there's no lead up. There's no telegraph. It's just right to the point. There's no wasted energy. And you could tell after the first exchange, Leonardo was like, oh, this might be a long night. And Silva said, don't worry. Don't worry. It's not going to be that long.
Not that long.
Yeah.
It's going to be the longest couple minutes of your life, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be more than that.
I mean, if we go through the pictures here of the finish, where she hurts her with the hands, and then she just starts throwing high kicks from both sides, and the ref's like, I have to stop. You're just standing there. I have to stop this. I mean,
that's it. That's pretty much the fight.
Yeah. UFC might copyright claim us for that because it looks too close to the actual fight. Yeah, I mean, Natália Silva is fantastic. I don't know why she's still this low on these cards, because anybody else coming in with an 8-fight win streak where the majority of them are finishes, and I think her last fight she had a spinning, I think it was a spinning kick. What's it? She a spinning kick or a spinning back?
It was a spin something, or she definitely got the
it was a spinning back kick, knocked out in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are we doing? Let's move her up. It's a division that they're trying to push more. I think we don't need to. Blunderbuff says her nose got busted right before that, right? Yeah, she beat the brakes off of her within like a minute. It's like getting thrown into like a garbage disposal is basically what happened in that fight. But they're at 125. Silva, I think, closed at like a 900 favorite. It's like, we don't need this. Just ascend her. She doesn't need the development fights. She's clearly ready for like the upper echelon of the division. But yeah, definitely someone everybody should be watching and tuning in when her name gets called.
She's exciting. She's got a lot of talent. There is definitely one glaring hole, I would say, in her stand-up would be the only thing. Like, her ground is pretty good. But dude, you've got to move your head. Like, there were a lot of times where it was literally on one stationary point and like the rest of her body is moving. Like, oh no. Oh no.
It is the 125 division. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I know. It's like we're talking about people's golf scores, but it's like, yeah, but they got a handicap. Like, let's chill.
Yeah. It's like graded on a curve, you know.
Exactly.
There's a bell curve in this division.
Yes, there's definitely. Yeah. And that's the UFC's fault. Like, it's not like when we say these things, it's not like, it's the fighter's fault or the division's fault or like women's fault. It's the UFC. Like, they just don't want to sign talent that's out there or are unwilling to pay the talent the money to sign them. Like,
or God forbid they do an atomweight fight or an atomweight division where 90% of the female talent is in that division, and they're just like, nah.
I mean, even my coach back in the day couldn't fight at the division that he wanted to fight at, so he just stopped early. You would have a lot less of that across the board, men and women, if you just opened up these weight divisions. There's no reason there shouldn't be a 65-pound weight division.
Yeah, it's crazy. There should be a weight class every 10 pounds.
End of story.
Yeah, it's so simple, but whatever. So yeah, that was the whole card. We're not going to talk about the Takashi Sato fight, even though that was another Kill Cliff fighter who lost. So it's a tough night. That's four. I think it was 4 losses for Kill Cliff. Which
they make good drinks,
though. They
make good drinks.
Incredible. Their gym is incredible. They got the best coach. I mean, it's fantastic. But like you said, once you get in there, none of that matters. That's what makes it so good, right? So yeah, we'll talk about. We'll do a moment of silence for the fights that we lost on this card. Not that much because they don't put a ton of effort into these cards. Ducote was originally supposed to fight Poliana Viana. Viana withdrew. That's probably why Ramiro's not here covering it, because he didn't get to watch Viana fight. But Ducote gets put in there with Godinez on short notice and then loses, and that's always a bummer when you take a new opponent on short notice and then you lose. It's tough. Rocky Pennington was supposed to fight Aldana, and then they're like, actually, Aldana's going to get a title shot. Never mind Rocky. And then the one that would have been the probably the most exciting fight that got canceled was the Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Bruno Ferreira, but they rescheduled it. That's about it.
Yeah,
nothing too crazy.
That's also probably why Raquel Pennington was commenting on almost every single fight on the card.
yeah. I hate that they do that. The Twitter posts during the fight. It's like, what are we doing? And then so we had bonuses. Borshchev got a bonus. Diego Ferreira got a bonus for dominating Johnson with a nasty follow-up shot. And then Mackenzie Dern gifted a fight of the night to Angela Hill by just beating the brakes off of her. I think this fight card should have had way more bonuses, like I do on every card. How does Buckley not get a bonus in this one? You know what I mean? I think Hooper should have got a bonus. Natália Silva should have got a bonus. You could argue Hernandez should have got a bonus. Hernandez definitely should have got a bonus, actually. What are they doing? What are they doing? I don't understand it. Meanwhile, they got
Chatri over here giving out bonuses to everybody. Yeah. Because they deserve it.
Yeah, Blunderbuff says, oh, hey, I've been to 4 submission grappling classes now. I'm ready for my contract, Mr. Chatri. Speaking of Chatri. That submission grappling they do is so fun. I love the rule set that they have, too, that it's literally just you just score submission attacks or attempts, like legitimate submission attempts is how you score. And then if it's tied, then they go into like position or aggression, things like that. That's amazing. That's fun stuff.
It's the only way you get better scoring is try new things. Like we all complain about all the scoring shit, but we've changed scoring in MMA once, twice over since 1992.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. And when there's clearly better options out there with scoring that are currently happening, and the UFC, or I guess it's not the UFC, it's just the athletic commissions are just like, well, that would mean that we admitted that we were wrong about something, so we can't do that.
or that means that we have to work. What? No,
yeah,
do that.
Yeah. Blunderbub said that wasn't a knock on submission grappling. He's just really excited about it. Grappling's amazing. It's so much fun. I get the excitement. But that's it for this card. Next week, we will be live Sunday morning again. I'm not sure what we're going to be covering yet because there's no UFC, so we'll have to take a look and see what's going on. But we'll definitely have an episode next Sunday. I think after that is Albazi versus Kai Kara France the following week. That's a fantastic fight card. It's another Apex one, but they actually stacked it up pretty well. Toasty, what do you have going on? What do you want to shout out? Thanks for joining.
Well, I got the plan was originally to get my pro license after this last fight, but there doesn't look like there's anything in like the pro area until like October. So it looks like I'm renewing my amateur license, and I'm going to try to get like 7 or 8 fights between now and October. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I'm trying to get an opponent for next weekend on the 3rd, the following weekend on the 9th. I think one at the end of next month, and then 3 more between then and October. Next fight is probably going to be in San Jose, so we'll see what happens. See if we can get anybody who's willing to take on the guy with 10 fights.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Blunderbub says Friday fights. Do it. Yeah, that we'll probably end up covering the Friday fights. Those are fantastic. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. I believe we are at 2,500 subscribers. So we're shooting for that 3,000. That would be great. I think we just passed 2,500 today. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Follow us on social media. It's if you go to storythefight.com, it'll list all of them. But also, it's just at storythefight on everything. Toasty, it's Toasty MMA.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, follow Toasty. Follow him along because he's about to be pro very soon. And his fights are on YouTube and they're fun to watch. So check those out. Also, this podcast was produced by Rich Bustos. Thanks everyone for listening to Story of the Fight.